The year is 2004. On August the 31st, a man wakes up in a hospital bed in Georgia, surrounded by machines that he does not recognize in a place that feels unfamiliar in a way he can't explain. Doctors are standing by, waiting for him to speak. As they ask him his name, he searches his mind for an answer, realizing that he does not have one. The hospital staff ask him where he's from, whether he has family or whether he remembers how he got there. He can't answer any of those questions either. What this man does not realize, at least not yet, is that everything he once was has already disappeared. His memories, his identity, his past, all gone. The only thing that anybody knows for certain is where he was found, behind a fast food restaurant in the early hours of the morning, badly injured and completely alone. This is the true story of Benjamin Kyle, a man whose entire past disappeared in one unexplained moment. When doctors began assessing Benjamin, it quickly became clear that this was not confusion caused by shock or medication. He was calm, coherent, and fully capable of conversation. He understood language, social cues, and the world around him, but when it came to anything personal, his mind returned nothing. No childhood memories, no familiar faces, no home address, not even a sense that he had lived an entire life prior to waking up in hospital that day. Medical staff later diagnosed him with profound retrograde amnesia, a rare condition in which memories formed before an injury are lost entirely, sometimes permanently, and often following extreme physical or psychological trauma. There was no wallet in Benjamin's possession, no phone, and no identification of any kind. Authorities ran his fingerprints through national databases. Nothing came back. No missing person reports matched him. No record explained who he was. For all legal and practical purposes, this man did not exist. Without a memory and without identification, the hospital faced a simple but unavoidable problem. This man needed a name. Medical records, legal forms, and future care all required one, and so he was given a placeholder, Benjamin Kyle, chosen arbitrarily with no connection to his real identity. It was never meant to last, but days turned into weeks and weeks into months, and no indication of his real name ever emerged. Law enforcement continued searching databases, missing person lists were reviewed repeatedly, and appeals were made quietly and then publicly. But still, nothing changed. As time passed, the name Benjamin Kyle began appearing on paperwork, then on temporary employment records, then eventually on official documents. Over time, it stopped feeling provisional. It became the only name that he knew how to answer to. When Benjamin Kyle left the hospital, he didn't return to normal life because there was no life waiting for him. Without identification he could explain, qualifications he could prove, or references he could provide, his options were limited almost immediately. Employers asked for histories he didn't have, landlords required paperwork he couldn't produce, and even opening a bank account or securing long-term housing became complicated. Benjamin took work that was available, short-term jobs, temporary labour, and roles that didn't demand a past he couldn't describe. When those jobs ended, he moved on, often relying on shelters and community support organisations to remain stable. Essentially, he was doing whatever he could to get by and survive. Throughout this time, he made genuine efforts to rebuild something resembling a normal life. He worked wherever he could, sought assistance when necessary, and continued cooperating with attempts to identify him. His case appeared on national television, in newspapers, and across missing persons databases. Years passed, and no one recognised him. No family came forward, and the memories he hoped might return never seemed to. For nearly an entire decade, Benjamin Kyle lived in a constant state of motion, not because of choice, but because he had no option but to. One question seemed to follow Benjamin throughout all of it. What happened before he was found? In the early hours of August the 31st, 2004, Benjamin Kyle was discovered unconscious behind a Burger King in Richmond Hill, Georgia, suffering from serious injuries. Doctors confirmed blunt force trauma, but the evidence stopped there, with no real explanation of what injuries he sustained or how they had occurred. There were no witnesses, no usable CCTV recordings, and no clear signs of a crime scene. Over the years, investigators and medical professionals acknowledged several possible explanations, none of which could ever be proven. One theory was an assault, such as a robbery or an attack, which could have accounted for his injuries. However, no stolen property could be confirmed and no report was ever filed. Another possibility was an accidental injury, such as a fall or collapse, potentially while already disorientated or under extreme stress. This fits medically but not circumstantially. A third explanation considered was a psychological crisis, followed by physical injury. A dissociative episode that placed him in a vulnerable situation with the injury occurring before or during that state. Each theory explained part of the picture, but none of them explained all of it. Even after his identity was discovered, no new evidence ever emerged. The moment that ended his old life still remains unreachable. In 2015, more than 10 years after he was found, science finally offered a new path forwards for Benjamin. There was an advancement in genetic genealogy which allowed unidentified individuals' DNA to be compared against growing family databases, slowly building connections where none had existed before. Benjamin Kyle agreed to be tested. What followed was a careful, methodical process. Distant relatives identified, family trees reconstructed, and fragments of an old life assembled piece by piece. Eventually, an answer emerged. Benjamin Kyle was identified as William Burgess Powell. On paper, the mystery had been solved, but knowing his name did not mean knowing himself. Unfortunately, learning his true identity did not bring relief. As investigators uncovered more about his life before 2004, a difficult reality became clear. Benjamin's past was not empty, it was traumatic. Records confirmed a childhood marked by long-term abuse and instability, followed by estrangement from family and a life shaped by psychological trauma. These were not isolated events, but sustained experiences that had followed him into adulthood. Medical experts reviewing the case offered a measured conclusion. In rare cases, profound trauma, particularly when combined with physical injury, can cause the brain to sever access to memory entirely. Rather than reliving experiences it cannot process, the mind disconnects from them. Seen in that light, his amnesia may not have been a failure. It may have been the brain's protection mechanism kicking in. Benjamin's memories never returned. Not gradually, not partially, they stayed entirely gone. Today, he continues to live largely as Benjamin Kyle. He understands the facts of his identity, he knows his real name, his documented history, and also what happened after he was found. But the emotional continuity, the sense of being the same person across time, never returned for him. By all accounts, he lives quietly, he works when possible, he values stability, and he avoids revisiting the past unless necessary. Those closest to the case have noted that reclaiming his former identity was never truly his goal. What mattered more was building a life that felt safe and sustainable, one not defined by trauma he could no longer access but still carried. The mystery, in the end, isn't whether his name was found, it's this. If memory shapes identity and memory can disappear entirely, then who are we without it? Somewhere in Georgia, in a moment nobody witnessed, one life ended and another began, quietly, without explanation, and without the comfort of remembering how it came to be. This is the story of Benjamin Kyle, the man without a past.